Michael Rourke stood outside apartment 2B of the Maple Avenue complex, one hand resting on the scarred canvas strap of his army duffel. 6 years of deployments, 3 tours, 1 shrapnel wound that still burned when it rained, all reduced to this bag and a single purpose: reclaim his daughter. He drew a breath and knocked 3 times, knuckles sharp against the wood. The door opened after too long a pause. Linda filled the frame. Lily's stepmother was neat as always, brown hair pulled back, white blouse crisp, but her eyes were ringed with fatigue, her mouth a practiced straight line. Michael? When did you get back? The question sounded like a stall. Just off the night flight, he said. His attempt at a smile tugged only half his mouth, the other half was a stiff seam of scar tissue. I came to see Lily. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The air inside struck him like a damp rag, mold, harsh disinfectant, and something metallic lurking underneath. Curtains were drawn so tightly the living room looked embalmed. Dust clung to frames on the shelf, Sarah and Lily smiling in frozen moments, with Michael conspicuously absent. She's in the kitchen, Linda said quickly, already retreating down the hall. The scrape of a broom pulled him onward. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. Lily, 9 now, though he still remembered her as a toddler on his knee, was bent under the table sweeping up dust. She wore an oversized nightgown, pale hair loose around her face, shoulders hunched as if the fabric itself were too heavy. Lily, Michael said softly, kneeling to her level. It's Dad. She flinched, straightened, and froze. No rush forward. No smile. She simply gripped the broom tighter, as though it were a staff that kept her steady. His chest pinched. As he reached toward her, he noticed the marks, red blotches scattered along her arms and up her neck. Some were raised, some peeling, raw skin glistening beneath. They weren't insect bites. The pattern was unnatural, almost deliberate, as if something had been placed on her skin and left to eat through. What happened here? His voice dropped, soldier low. Lily tugged her sleeve down, hiding the marks. Michael turned toward the sink. Linda was washing a glass already spotless. What are those? He asked, his tone clipped. Just an allergy, she answered without looking up. Her skin's sensitive. I'm keeping an eye on it. He said nothing, but the weight of disbelief sat squarely in his silence. Dinner was a performance of clinking cutlery and broken small talk. Lily picked at her plate, her eyes fixed anywhere but on them. Linda murmured answers like lines from a half-memorized script. That night Michael stretched out on the sagging sofa. The ache in his bones begged for sleep, but his ears, honed by years of ambushes, remained alert. Around midnight came the sound. Footsteps, feather-light, deliberate. Not the uneven shuffle of a child. Not the weight of an adult. They stopped outside Lily's room. The doorknob clicked once. Then silence. Michael sat up, pulse hammering. Minutes later, a muffled whimper seeped through the ceiling. He was up the stairs in seconds, easing Lily's door open. She thrashed in bed, sweat shining on her forehead. Her lips moved in broken fragments. Don't take it, not again. He shook her gently. Sweetheart, it's Dad. I'm here. Her eyes snapped open, and she clung to him with desperate strength. Michael gathered her against his chest, feeling her heart race like a trapped bird. He glanced around the room, sharp scent of disinfectant, a dark crescent stain on the sheet near the pillow, brown-red but faintly gleaming. Soldier's instinct growled, enemies inside the perimeter. When Lily's breathing steadied, he tucked the blanket around her and lowered himself to the floor beside the bed. He pulled out his old phone, flicked on the flashlight, and lifted the edge of the sheet. The beam froze him in place. Not bedbugs. A seething carpet of red, berry-shaped creatures pulsed beneath the pillow, bodies slick and overfull, excreting a luminous crimson fluid that bled into the mattress fibers. They writhed over one another, alive, feeding. Michael's spine iced over. He angled the light, recording video, every twitch, every shine of the fluid. Then something metallic glinted at the mattress seam. He leaned closer. A syringe. Glass. Fine-tipped. A smear of the same crimson fluid clung to the needle. No label. Not pharmacy-made. Lab-made. The air punched from his lungs. This wasn't an infestation. It was an operation. Wrapping the syringe in a clean cloth, he slid it into his pack, snapped more photos, then lowered the sheet, covering the abomination again. Back on the sofa, he searched: bright red insect, bugs, glowing red fluid, engineered parasite. Nothing matched. No database, no images. His reflection stared back from the black screen, a man who'd walked battlefields now staring at one under his daughter's pillow. Before exhaustion dragged him down, he tapped one note into his phone. Mission: identify the source. Collect evidence. Protect Lily. Expose whoever's behind this. When he looked up, Lily was sleeping quietly. But her whispered plea clung to him, barbed and unshakable. Don't take it anymore. Michael pulled the duffel closer, resting a hand on the rough canvas like an old comrade. He knew the truth in his marrow. This was no homecoming. This was the beginning of a war, and the battlefield was his own child's bed. The dawn over Havenwood was a gray wash of cloud, pressing the streets into silence. Michael hadn't slept. He sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee that tasted like ashes. The syringe, still wrapped in cloth, lay heavy in his pocket like a live grenade. Upstairs, Lily stirred. He heard the creak of her small steps, the hesitant shuffle of slippers against the hallway boards. She appeared in the doorway, pale and thin, clutching a stuffed rabbit worn to threadbare seams. Her hair caught the weak light, almost colorless. "Morning, sweetheart," Michael said, forcing warmth. Lily gave a slow nod but didn't smile. She slid into a chair opposite him, setting the rabbit on the table like a shield. He poured her some cereal, but she only nudged the spoon. Her eyes drifted toward the ceiling as though she was listening to something invisible. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked. Her head tilted, blonde strands falling across her cheek. Then, in a voice so faint he almost didn't catch it, she whispered. "They sang again." Michael froze. "Who did?" Her gaze shifted toward the upstairs room. "The little red ones. They sing at night when it's dark. Right under my pillow. They say they're hungry." A chill ran through him, sharper than desert wind. He set down his mug. "Lily, how long have you been hearing them?" She pressed her lips together, fingers tightening on the rabbit's ears. "Since Mom got sick," she said finally, eyes dropping to the table. "But Linda said they're just dreams. She told me not to tell." Michael's breath caught. "Since Sarah died?" "That was years ago." The timing carved an ugly thought into his mind. This wasn't random infestation. It had a timeline, a starting point. Before he could push further, Linda entered, dressed for work, hair pinned back, face already armored in practiced calm. "You're both up early." Her eyes flicked from Michael to Lily, reading the tension. "Lily, sweetheart, get dressed. You'll be late for school." Michael stood. "I'll take her today." Linda stiffened almost imperceptibly. "You don't need to. You just got back." "I'll take her," he repeated, his voice like gravel. For a moment, Linda held his stare. Then she smiled thinly. "Fine." She turned to Lily. "Go change." When the girl was gone, Michael leaned against the counter, voice low. "She hears them, Linda. They whisper to her. That's not allergy. That's not a dream." Linda's composure cracked just enough for her jaw to tighten. Children imagine things when they're grieving. Don't drag her deeper into it. Michael wanted to demand answers, to slam the syringe on the counter, but instinct told him to hold. In war, information was ammunition. You didn't fire until you had enough to kill. He walked Lily to school. The cold bit through his jacket, but her small hand in his felt colder still. She clung tight, silent, eyes darting as if shadows might crawl from alleys. At the gate, other children ran, shouted, spilled laughter into the air, but Lily stood apart, shrinking against him. Her teacher, Mrs. Collins, greeted them. A kind woman with gentle eyes. Michael introduced himself, asked if Lily had been well. The teacher's smile faltered. "She's a bright girl," she said softly. "But lately she's been so tired. She falls asleep in class sometimes." And, she hesitated, then lowered her voice. "She's had strange marks. I suggested a doctor, but," she stopped, glancing toward Linda, who lingered nearby, pretending not to listen. Michael thanked her, masking the blaze in his chest. That night, after dinner, Lily clung to him again. When he tucked her in, she gripped his sleeve. "Stay, Daddy. Please. They don't like you here." The words sank deep. He smoothed her hair, kissed her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." He stayed until her breathing evened. But when the house settled into night stillness, Michael heard it, so faint it could have been mistaken for wind. A chorus of tiny, rhythmic chittering, layered and eerie. Coming from beneath Lily's pillow. Not just movement. Not just crawling. Voices. Michael's blood ran cold. The war had found his home, and it whispered to his daughter while she slept. The whispers crawled under Michael's skin long after they faded. By dawn, he hadn't closed his eyes. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table with the syringe wrapped in cloth, replaying Lily's words, "They don't like you here." It wasn't just paranoia. Someone, was orchestrating this. When Linda descended the stairs, dressed in her pressed blouse and slacks, Michael tucked the syringe back into his pocket. She moved with her usual briskness, brewing coffee without acknowledging him. "Where are those packages coming from?" he asked suddenly. Her hands faltered on the filter. "What packages?" "The ones you take in early morning, before the neighbors even wake. Square boxes. Neat, taped clean. Always hidden away." Linda didn't look up. "You've been listening to gossip." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm watching." His voice was steel. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't answer. Later that morning, Michael walked Lily to school again. This time he lingered after she entered the building. The red brick elementary stood like a sentinel over the small town, its playground deserted in the chill wind. He leaned on the fence, eyes scanning. He was back in soldier mode, observe, gather intel, identify weak spots. "Michael Rourke?" The voice came from behind him. An elderly woman, silver-haired and bundled in a heavy coat, was trimming roses in the yard across the street. "Mrs. Carter, a neighbor from years ago." "It's really you," she said, smiling with toothless warmth. "I didn't expect to see you back." He nodded politely, stepping closer. "Just got in. How have you been?" "Old bones creak, but I manage." Her eyes flicked toward his building. "Your little girl is such a sweet thing. Poor dear. Always looks tired." "And Linda," the woman's voice lowered, conspiratorial. "She's changed. Doesn't talk to anyone much. But I see her, you know. Taking in those odd parcels at night. Not from the postman. From a black van." Michael's pulse quickened. "Black van?" The woman nodded. "Same one, every time. No logos. No sound but tires crunching the gravel. She carries the boxes inside quick as a fox." He thanked her, masking his storm. By the afternoon, Michael had his chance. Linda announced she was running errands. As soon as the door shut, he moved. He circled to the backyard, where the trash bin sat under the sagging fence. Tugging gloves from his pack, he flipped the lid. Rotting food. Empty bottles. Junk mail. But then, flattened cardboard with a faint printed logo, a circular design of 3 spirals, and beneath it, block letters, Biogen Research Solutions. Michael snapped a photo. The name burned into his mind like coordinates on a map. Inside, he searched further. Linda's office, tucked behind the kitchen, was unlocked. He entered, silent as a shadow. The room was meticulously organized, too meticulous. On the desk sat a laptop, books on biology and medical engineering filling the shelves. He rifled drawers. Bills, receipts, insurance papers. Then, a locked drawer. He forced it quietly with a screwdriver. Inside lay a blood-red external hard drive and a stack of handwritten notes. He flipped through quickly. Symbols. Numbers. Diagrams. And on one page, underlined twice. Red fluid F3, strong reaction. Age, 9 years. Low-dose tolerance confirmed. Michael's blood froze. 9 years old. Low-dose tolerance. Ellie. He photographed every page, every diagram, then slid the evidence back exactly as he'd found it. Precision mattered. If Linda suspected, the trail could vanish. That night, as Lily slept curled under her blanket, Michael sat guard at her door. He knew the war had officially begun. The house no longer felt like walls and windows. It was a cage, a lab, a front for something vast and sinister. And the first clue told him exactly where to aim his fury: Biogen Research Solutions. Michael's instincts told him one thing: before he confronted anyone, he needed hard evidence. Suspicion could be brushed aside. Photos could be claimed as misunderstandings. But a face on camera? A hand holding a syringe over his daughter's body? That could not be denied. That night, after Lily drifted into an uneasy sleep, Michael unpacked the battered duffel that had followed him through Afghanistan, Syria, and unnamed deserts where the wind carried death. Among the gear was a small surveillance kit he'd never thought he'd use in his own home, a microcamera no bigger than a coin, a voice-activated recorder, and a handful of trace collection bags. He moved like a ghost through Lily's room. The microcamera went on the ceiling, angled to capture the bed clearly. The recorder slid beneath the headboard, tucked against the frame where even careful eyes wouldn't spot it. He tested the feeds from his phone, checked the angles twice, and pulled the blanket gently back over Lily's small body. Her lips moved in sleep. "Don't take it, not again." Michael brushed a hand over her hair, then stepped out, closing the door softly behind him. The night stretched slow and suffocating. Michael sat on the living room sofa, eyes glued to his phone screen. The camera feed glowed back at him, Lily curled under her blanket, chest rising and falling. The minutes ticked, punctuated by the clock in the kitchen and the occasional groan of pipes. At 2:07 a.m., movement. A shadow filled the doorway of Lily's room. Michael's grip tightened on the phone. The figure moved inside, tall, long-haired, careful as a thief. The blanket was pulled back. A hand reached down, gloved, holding a slender object that glimmered in the infrared feed. A syringe. Michael's throat clenched. The figure pressed the syringe gently against Lily's wrist, fastening something with medical tape. His daughter didn't stir, drugged by exhaustion or something more sinister. Then, with practiced ease, the figure pulled the blanket back up and slipped out, vanishing into the hallway's dark. Michael sat frozen. He had it, video proof. By the time dawn smeared pale light across the curtains, his decision was made. He called 911. "My name is Michael Rourke," he said, voice low and controlled. "I'm reporting child abuse and medical tampering. I have video footage. My daughter is the victim." Within 15 minutes, 2 officers entered the house. Their uniforms looked almost out of place in the stale gloom of the living room. Michael showed them the footage, handed over the syringe he'd recovered. They watched carefully, exchanged uneasy glances. One officer, young and skeptical, said, "Mr. Rourke, this doesn't clearly show a face. Could be anyone. Could be misinterpreted." Michael's jaw locked. A syringe taped to her arm while she sleeps is misinterpreted? The older officer held up a hand. We understand your concern, but there are no visible injuries we can confirm. No definitive evidence of violence. This looks more like a domestic dispute. Michael's fists clenched so hard his knuckles cracked. Domestic dispute? She's being experimented on. The officers exchanged another glance. We'll file your report, the older one said finally, but without clearer evidence, our hands are tied. Michael's laugh was hollow and dangerous. Tied hands. Always the excuse. When they left, he stood in the living room, rage simmering under his skin. He knew what came next. If the system wouldn't protect Lily, he would. He scrolled through his contacts and found the one name he trusted, Captain Maya Torres, an old comrade now working inside federal investigations. He drafted a short message, attached the video, the syringe photos, and the shot of the Biogen logo from the trash. Maya. Need help. Something big. It's my daughter. Look into Biogen Research Solutions. He hit send. Then he sat in the dark house, listening to Lily's quiet breathing upstairs, and vowed silently. If the law wouldn't fight for her, then the war was his. Morning light spilled into the kitchen, turning the dust in the air into gold flecks. Michael sat at the table, nursing black coffee that had long gone cold. He hadn't slept, again. The syringe video burned in his mind like a brand, the officer's dismissive tone echoing louder than the night's whispers. Linda appeared in the doorway. She wore a pale cardigan, her hair tied back with clinical neatness. A forced smile tugged at her lips. Good morning. Want some breakfast? Michael studied her. The calm voice, the clean clothes, the practiced hospitality, camouflage. He'd seen it before on the battlefield, insurgents smiling even while hiding detonators under their robes. No, he said. His voice was gravel. We need to talk. Linda froze a half second, then moved to the counter, fiddling with the coffee pot. About what? He leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low but sharp. About what's happening to Lily. About the packages. About the things under her pillow. Her hand jerked just slightly, enough for him to notice, but she didn't turn. You've been listening to neighborhood gossip again. Mrs. Carter loves her stories. Michael stood. His shadow stretched across the kitchen floor toward her. I saw them, Linda. Hundreds of them. Red, crawling, whispering. And I found the syringe. Now she turned. Her face was pale but composed. Bedbugs. An allergy. You're letting your soldier paranoia invent monsters. Michael slammed the table with his fist, the sound cracking like a gunshot. Lily, upstairs, stirred in her room. He lowered his voice, but his words hit harder. This isn't paranoia. This is my daughter. And she's being used. For a moment, Linda's mask slipped. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes flashing, not fear, but calculation. Michael caught it instantly. It was the same look he'd seen on enemy combatants caught between fight and retreat. You've been getting shipments, he pressed. From Biogen Research Solutions. Boxes carried in at night, hidden from neighbors. I found one in the trash. And in your office, notes about red fluid. About tolerance. About 9 years old. Do you want to tell me what that means? Her composure cracked. You were in my office? I was in my daughter's nightmare, Michael shot back. Your office just told me why. Silence hung heavy. The hum of the fridge was the only sound. Finally, Linda exhaled, her voice quieter, almost trembling. You don't understand what you've stumbled into. This is bigger than me, bigger than you. You can't stop it. Michael stepped closer, his scarred face inches from hers. Watch me. The rest of the day unfolded under a taut silence. Linda retreated into her office, shutting the door like a bunker. Michael stayed close to Lily, playing cards with her at the kitchen table, pretending everything was fine while his mind warred. At night, he kept his phone feed open, watching the camera above Lily's bed. And then, around midnight, the shadow returned. Michael's chest turned to ice. The figure leaned over Lily, repeating the same motion, blanket down, syringe ready. But this time, Michael didn't wait. He bolted up the stairs, silent as a predator, and pushed Lily's door open with controlled force. The shadow froze. Linda. Her face half-lit by the dim glow of the nightlight, syringe trembling in her hand. Michael's voice was a knife's edge. Step away from her. For the first time, fear broke through her mask. She let the syringe clatter to the floor and backed away, hands raised slightly. Michael, she whispered. You don't know what you're doing. No, he said, his eyes locked on hers, every muscle coiled to strike. For the first time, I know exactly what I'm doing. And as Lily stirred, murmuring in her sleep, Michael realized the war had just shifted from whispers in the dark to open combat inside his own home. The night after Michael caught Linda over Lily's bed, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like enemy territory. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind against the windows carried the weight of threat. Michael didn't confront her further that night. He knew enough about interrogation. You didn't strike when the enemy expected it. You waited until they slipped. And Linda, pale and shaken after dropping the syringe, had slipped badly. By morning, Havenwood was shrouded in a storm. Heavy clouds pressed low, the air thick with salt and electricity. Rain slashed sideways across the small town. Michael brewed coffee in silence. Linda sat across from him, lips tight, knuckles white around her mug. Neither spoke. Only Lily, perched at the table with her stuffed rabbit, broke the silence with the scrape of a spoon against her cereal bowl. When Linda left for groceries, Michael pulled out his phone. A message had come in from Maya. Received your intel. Biogen confirmed on watch list. Sit tight, sending help. ETA 24 hours. Do not confront alone. Relief surged through him, but it was tangled with dread. He had 24 hours to keep Lily alive in a house crawling with secrets. That evening, the storm hit full force. The old house groaned under the wind. Thunder rattled the windows. Power flickered twice before cutting out entirely, plunging everything into shadow. Michael lit a lantern from the storage closet. The warm glow flickered across Lily's pale face as she huddled against him, her rabbit clutched tight. Daddy, she whispered. They're louder tonight. Michael froze. Who? The red ones. They don't whisper now, they scream. Her words stabbed like ice. He carried her into the living room, laying her on the couch beside him. The storm outside howled, but inside, the sound of faint, high-pitched chittering crept through the walls like fingernails. Michael clenched his jaw. The storm wasn't the only thing battering this house. Around midnight, a knock came at the door. 3 firm raps, muffled by rain. Michael froze. No one sane visited during a storm like this. He grabbed his service pistol, moved to the door, and called out, "Who is it?" Silence. Then, another 3 knocks. He pulled Lily close, signaling her to stay low. He opened the door a fraction, pistol raised. On the porch stood 2 men in rain-slick coats, their faces shadowed. One lifted a badge under the lantern's dim light. Federal Task Force. You Rourke? Michael hesitated, eyes scanning. No insignias, no names. But the badge was real, government issue. And behind them, a third figure emerged from the rain, an older man with stark white hair and a leather case. I'm Dr. Simon Black, the man said, voice steady despite the storm. Captain Torres sent us. Michael lowered the pistol slightly, but not completely. Years of war had taught him, trust was earned, not given. Prove it, he said. Dr. Black nodded. He unlatched the case, revealing files stamped with Biogen's logo, cross-referenced with Maya's own code signature. We're here because of your daughter, Black said firmly. And because those things under her pillow aren't bedbugs. They're engineered organisms. The storm thundered. Lightning cracked. Michael stepped aside, pulling Lily closer. Then get inside. And tell me exactly what the hell I'm up against. The storm raged outside, rattling the shutters like a beast clawing to be let in. Inside, the lantern cast a trembling circle of light over Michael, Lily, and the three newcomers. Dr. Simon Black adjusted his rain-spattered glasses, his expression grave. Mr. Rourke, he said, setting his leather case on the table, we need to examine your daughter's room immediately. Every second counts. Michael hesitated, then nodded. He carried Lily into the living room, away from the stairs, and knelt to meet her frightened eyes. Stay here, sweetheart. I'll be right upstairs. Rabbit will guard you. He tucked the stuffed toy into her arms. When he returned to the hallway, Agents Davis and Evans were already unpacking gear, UV lights, sealed sample jars, swabs. Dr. Black carried a sleek case of surgical instruments. The sight made Michael's chest tighten. This wasn't routine. This was triage. The three men entered Lily's room. It smelled faintly of disinfectant and something sweeter, an almost metallic tang that clung to the air. Michael's stomach twisted. Dr. Black crouched at the bed, lifting the sheets with gloved hands. The creatures reacted instantly. A mass of crimson bodies writhed and scattered, their bloated forms pulsing with translucent veins that glimmered faintly in the dark. Davis swore under his breath. Jesus Christ. They're not insects. They're engineered organisms, Dr. Black finished. His voice was clinical but tinged with unease. See the segmentation? The fluid sacs. Natural bedbugs don't bioluminesce. Michael's fists clenched. They've been feeding on her. Black nodded grimly. With practiced precision, he captured several of the squirming creatures in jars. As the glass sealed, they emitted a faint, high-pitched chittering, like tiny screams. Evans swept the mattress with his UV light. Trails of bright crimson lit up in erratic, circular patterns. Feeding tracks, he muttered. And here, needle punctures, aligned with the bites. Michael froze. Needles? Black leaned closer, pulling something from the crack between mattress and frame. A syringe, identical to the one Michael had already found, still glistened with residue. The liquid inside shimmered unnaturally bright under the UV. He lifted it with tongs, voice low. This isn't insect work. This is human intervention. Michael felt the walls close in. His daughter's bed wasn't a place of rest, it was a lab bench. Explain, he demanded. Dr. Black exhaled slowly, wiping condensation from his glasses. These organisms aren't feeding for sustenance. They're designed to extract. The fluid sacs we see? They're reservoirs. What they take from Lily, they're not consuming, they're storing. Storing for what? Michael asked, his voice sharp. Black glanced at him, then back at the writhing jars. For collection. Someone has been harvesting your daughter's biological material, systematically, repeatedly. The word struck like bullets. Michael's throat went dry. Harvesting. His daughter wasn't just sick. She was a resource. Davis and Evans pried up a floorboard near the bed at Black's direction. Beneath it, in a hidden compartment, lay rows of glass vials. Each filled with a dark, viscous red liquid, labeled in uneven handwriting. L. Rourke. Michael dropped to one knee, fury surging. They kept her blood under her bed? Black's face hardened. Not blood. Something more specific. Look at the separation, see that faint luminescence? This is a concentrated biofluid. Whatever genetic markers your daughter carries, they're valuable. Valuable enough to engineer creatures just to extract it. Michael staggered back, breath heavy. The storm outside cracked like artillery, thunder shaking the house. His little girl wasn't suffering from pests. She wasn't unlucky. She was targeted. And someone had turned her bedroom into a crime scene. Black carefully secured the samples and syringes into his case, snapping the locks shut. "Mr. Rourke," he said, meeting Michael's burning gaze, "you need to understand. This isn't an isolated incident. Your daughter is part of something larger, something orchestrated. And whoever is behind it won't stop just because you caught them once." Michael's jaw tightened. "Then they'll learn what happens when you come for a soldier's child." By dawn, Havenwood was a town under siege. Not by warplanes or soldiers, but by silence, the kind that follows when something is happening that no one dares to name. Michael stood at the living room window, his hand resting on Lily's shoulder as she slept curled against him. The storm had passed, leaving the streets wet and gleaming under pale morning light. But the storm inside the house had only begun. Dr. Black had made one call after sealing the samples. His words were clipped, urgent, red priority. Biohazard containment. Immediate quarantine. Now, the response was arriving. It started with sirens in the distance, faint at first, then swelling into a chorus. White vans and unmarked SUVs rolled into the narrow street, followed by 2 ambulances and a truck carrying men and women in hazmat suits. Neighbors peeked from curtains, whispering, their eyes wide with the kind of fear that spreads faster than fire. Michael opened the front door before the knock came. He wasn't about to let strangers barge in blind. A woman stepped forward, tall, sharp-featured, eyes like steel. She carried no weapon but radiated command. "Mr. Rourke?" "Diana West, Federal Bioresponse Unit." She flashed credentials faster than his soldier's eyes could scan, but real nonetheless. Michael gave a curt nod. "She's inside. My daughter. But you treat her like a human being, not a specimen." Diana's gaze softened just slightly. "Understood. She's a child first. A patient second." Behind her, the hazmat team moved in, sealing doors, stringing plastic barriers across windows, setting up decontamination chambers. Within minutes, the Rourke home looked less like a house and more like a crime lab. Linda emerged from her office as the team swarmed. She froze mid-step, her face pale, eyes darting between Michael, Diana, and the figures in suits. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, her voice cracking. Michael turned to her slowly, his tone cold as stone. "The end of your lies." Linda's jaw clenched, but she tried to recover. "You can't just invade our home like this. I'll call an attorney." Diana West cut her off with a voice like a blade. "Mrs. Rourke, we have reason to believe this residence has been used for illegal biological experimentation. You'll come with us for questioning." Linda laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Experimentation? That's insane. You're all making a mistake." But her eyes betrayed her. Michael had seen that look too many times, the trapped expression of someone whose cover was blown. The hazmat team pried up more floorboards. Michael watched as they unearthed additional vials, dozens, all labeled with Lily's initials. Some glowed faintly under the sterile light. Others were sealed in insulated containers marked with codes he couldn't decipher. "Christ," one technician muttered. "It's a storage hub." Diana's expression was grim. She turned to Linda. "You want to keep denying this?" Linda's mask cracked. Her lips trembled. I didn't have a choice." Michael stepped forward, fury flaring. "You had every choice. And you chose to use my daughter like a lab rat." Linda's eyes flickered, then hardened. "You think you know what's going on? You don't. This is bigger than me. Bigger than you. They'll come for her whether I cooperate or not. At least I tried to control it." Her words fell like ice water. Michael's fists clenched, but Diana raised a hand to stop him. "We'll sort her role out later. For now, she's in custody." She signaled to the agents. Within seconds, Linda was handcuffed, her protests swallowed by the clink of steel and the shuffle of boots. Michael didn't look at her again. As Linda was escorted out, Lily stirred awake on the couch. Her small voice carried through the chaos. "Daddy?" Michael knelt, pulling her into his arms. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." But as he held her, he caught sight of the hazmat team pulling up another panel in her room. Beneath it lay a hidden cavity lined with cold metal racks. On them sat vials, scores of them, each filled with the same luminous red fluid. And every vial bore the same handwritten name. L. Rourke. Michael's blood went cold. Not only had they been taking from her, they'd been stockpiling. Diana's voice was low, urgent, almost reverent. "Mr. Rourke, whatever this is, it isn't finished. Someone planned for long-term extraction. And I promise you this, your daughter is not the only child." The room spun around Michael. His world narrowed to Lily's face, her fragile breath against his chest. He swore then, silently and irrevocably, no matter how deep this conspiracy went, no matter who stood behind it, he would burn it down to ashes. The convoy rolled out of Havenwood under flashing lights and hushed orders. Michael sat in the back of a reinforced transport van, Lily curled against his chest, her rabbit squeezed between them. Outside, through the rain-slick windows, he watched his old house shrink into the distance, now sealed in plastic, crawling with hazmat suits, and marked with bright red quarantine tape. Lily's eyelids fluttered open briefly. "Daddy, are we going home?" Michael pressed his lips to her damp hair. "We're going somewhere safe. Safer than that house ever was." She gave a faint nod before drifting back into sleep, small fingers tangled in his shirt. He held her tighter, jaw clenched. Home. The word had lost its meaning. 2 hours later, the convoy arrived at the National Bioresponse Facility, a fortress of glass and steel tucked into the countryside. High fences coiled with razor wire surrounded the compound. Floodlights swept across the grounds in precise arcs. Michael recognized the design, military discipline disguised as science. Inside, everything gleamed white. Floors, walls, ceilings, sterile to the point of suffocation. Automatic doors hissed open at the wave of a badge. Armed guards stood at every corridor. It felt more like a classified bunker than a hospital. Michael was escorted with Lily into a secured pediatric wing. The room was bright but empty, outfitted with monitors and observation equipment. A glass partition separated it from a control room where technicians in lab coats typed rapidly into consoles. Lily stirred uneasily on the bed, the red marks on her arms still visible under the harsh light. Michael stood at her side, refusing to move an inch. Dr. Simon Black entered, his case in hand. With him came Diana West, her presence commanding, her eyes colder than the steel doors behind her. "Mr. Rourke," Diana began, her voice level, "your daughter is stable for now. But the samples we retrieved confirm she's been repeatedly exposed to engineered organisms. They weren't designed to kill her outright. They were designed to adapt to her." Michael's stomach turned. "Adapt how?" Dr. Black set a vial of the luminous red fluid on the counter. It glowed faintly even under the sterile light. "This isn't simple blood. It's a hybrid substance, part biological, part synthetic. Whatever she produces, it interacts with the injected organisms in a way we've never documented." Michael narrowed his eyes. "You're saying she's valuable to them? A resource?" Diana nodded once. "Yes. And she's not the first." The words hit like a sledgehammer. "Not the first?" Dr. Black opened a folder, sliding photographs across the counter. Children. Thin, pale, each marked with the same kind of rash Lily bore. Some lay in hospital beds, others stared blankly at cameras. Each file was stamped with the same code, Project K-21. Michael's fists tightened until his knuckles whitened. "How long?" "Nearly a decade," Diana said softly. "The program was shut down once, officially. But clearly, it never died. Your wife's death, Mr. Rourke, it may not have been accidental." The room spun. "Sarah." The crash. The way it had never made sense. His chest burned like shrapnel tearing through him. "Don't," he growled. "Don't you stand there and tell me they took her too." Diana's gaze didn't falter. "We're investigating that possibility." Michael looked down at Lily, so small, her breathing uneven. Rage and grief twisted inside him until they were indistinguishable. Alarms blared suddenly. Red light strobed across the ceiling. Technicians scrambled behind the glass partition. "What's happening?" Michael barked. Dr. Black's face went pale. He pointed to the monitor displaying Lily's vitals. "Her immune response is spiking. Temperature's climbing. The organisms are still active inside her." Lily whimpered, twisting under the sheets. Her skin flushed red, patches glowing faintly as if lit from within. Michael grabbed her hand. "Stay with me, Lily. Daddy's here." Diana slammed the intercom button. "Prep an isolation unit. Now." The medical team rushed in, swarming around Lily with equipment. One nurse drew a syringe of clear fluid, plunging it into her arm. Another pressed cooling packs to her chest. Machines beeped frantically, rising and falling like war drums. Michael stood helpless, his soldiers training useless against an enemy he couldn't shoot. He could only grip her hand and whisper, "Fight, baby. Please fight." After long, brutal minutes, the alarms slowed. The monitors steadied. Lily's breathing eased. Dr. Black exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "She stabilized. But it's temporary." Michael's voice was low, lethal. "What do you need from me?" Black hesitated, then looked at Diana. She gave a single nod. "Your blood," he said finally. "We need to see if the resistance in her system came from you. If it did, you may be her only chance." Michael's chest heaved once. Twice. Then he rolled up his sleeve. "Take it. Take whatever you need. Just save her." Michael lay on a narrow hospital bed, the same sterile lights glaring above him that had burned into Lily's fragile skin. Electrodes clung to his chest, a steady rhythm of beeps marking his pulse. He had faced sniper fire, roadside bombs, and ambushes in the desert. Nothing had ever rattled him like the sound of those beeps, proof that his body, his blood, was now the battlefield where his daughter's survival would be won or lost. Dr. Simon Black prepped a transfusion line, his gloved hands steady but his eyes betraying the gravity of what they were about to attempt. "We'll begin with a limited transfer. If your immune markers match hers, your body could give her the antibodies she needs to fight off the engineered organisms. But there are risks, serious ones." Michael's jaw tightened. "I'm not asking about risks. I'm asking if it'll save her." Black hesitated. "It might. But your immune system could destabilize too. We're stepping into unknown territory." "Do it," Michael said, rolling up his sleeve. "I've spent my life bleeding for strangers. This is my daughter. You're not stopping me." Across the room, Lily lay pale and motionless under a cocoon of cooling blankets. Her tiny chest rose and fell in shallow spurts, her small fingers twitching against the sheets. Michael forced himself to look away. If he kept staring, he'd lose the steel he needed to finish this. Diana West entered, her tone clipped, "All business. Everything's prepped. Mr. Rourke, you're her only viable donor. Once we start, there's no turning back." Michael met her eyes. "Then don't waste another second." The procedure began. Tubes connected father to daughter through a filtration unit glowing faint blue under the lab's sterile lights. Michael felt the pinch of the needle, then a slow pull, his blood drawn, processed, reinfused with a cocktail of experimental filters, and sent directly into Lily's small veins. At first, the sensation was subtle. A warmth leaving his arm, a heaviness settling in his chest. Then the weakness came, creeping through his limbs like cold water soaking into cloth. His breathing slowed, his vision dimmed around the edges. Still, Michael didn't flinch. He turned his head toward Lily's bed. Her body twitched, her skin blotched with faint crimson lines as if her veins were glowing. Then, slowly, the erratic beeping of her monitor began to steady. "Her vitals are responding," Black said, voice hushed but urgent. "Immune markers stabilizing. It's working." Michael's lips pressed into a hard line. "Then keep going." Minutes dragged like hours. Sweat soaked Michael's shirt, his face pale under the lights. His chest heaved with the effort to stay conscious. He focused on Lily, her lashes fluttering, her small fingers unfurling, clutching her rabbit once more. Then she whispered. Barely audible, but enough to shatter him. "Daddy?" Michael blinked rapidly, fighting the blur in his eyes. "I'm right here, baby." Her lips quivered into the faintest smile. "It doesn't hurt anymore." Tears stung his eyes. He clenched her hand, ignoring the tremor in his own. "That's because Daddy's sharing his strength with you. All of it, if I have to." Her eyelids sank shut again, but her breathing eased, deeper, calmer. The monitors confirmed it, her body was fighting back. The transfer lasted nearly an hour. When it was finally over, Dr. Black carefully disconnected the lines. Michael tried to sit up but nearly collapsed. Diana caught his shoulder, steadying him. "You gave her enough," she said quietly. "For now." Michael swallowed, his throat raw. "For now isn't good enough." Black held up a vial of Michael's blood, now tagged and logged. "We'll isolate the unique immune cells you carry and replicate them. If we succeed, she won't need constant transfusions. She'll have her own defense." Michael leaned back against the bed, his body shaking but his voice iron. "Then succeed. Because if you don't, none of this matters." Hours later, Michael sat weak but awake beside Lily's bed. She slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, color returning to her cheeks. Every so often, she stirred and squeezed his hand, as if her small body knew the lifeline tethering her to him. Michael brushed a strand of blonde hair from her forehead. For the first time since he'd returned home, hope didn't feel like a luxury. It felt like a weapon. He whispered to her, voice low and fierce. "They wanted to turn you into a lab rat, sweetheart. But they didn't count on me. They don't know what it means to wake a soldier's rage." He lifted his head, his eyes locking on the glass partition where Diana and Black observed. "If they think they can take her again," he said, voice like steel, "they'll learn what war really looks like." The next morning, the facility felt heavier than the night before. Michael sat in a chair beside Lily's bed, her small hand in his, as dawn broke in pale streaks through the reinforced glass. For the first time in weeks, her breathing was even, her skin warm with color instead of burning with fever. He had nearly lost her, and the thoughts still gnawed at him like shrapnel lodged too deep to pull out. A soft knock at the door broke his thoughts. Diana West stepped inside, followed by Dr. Black. They looked more serious than ever, eyes sharp, shoulders squared. Diana closed the door behind her. "Mr. Rourke," she said, voice low. "It's time we tell you everything. No more pieces. No more evasions. You deserve the truth." Michael's grip on Lily's hand tightened. "Then say it. All of it." Dr. Black laid a thick folder on the table. Inside were photographs, charts, and files stamped with classified, Project K-21. Michael's soldier's instincts flared, the markings were military, the language precise. "This began as a government program nearly 10 years ago," Black explained. "Its purpose was to study children's immune systems, specifically, how they reacted to exposure from engineered organisms. The theory was that children's adaptability could unlock resistance to bioweapons." Michael's jaw hardened. "They used kids as guinea pigs." "Yes," Black admitted. "And one of the program's most promising candidates was your wife, Sarah Harper." Michael's chest froze. His voice came out sharp. "Sarah?" Diana stepped closer, her eyes unflinching. "Before she died, Sarah was part of a genetic trial. She carried rare markers, resistance no adult subjects could match. But the program was shut down after public backlash and internal whistleblowing. At least, that's what the records claimed. Michael's world tilted. Are you telling me Sarah's death wasn't an accident? Diana didn't soften the blow. Her car crash was staged. We believe she was eliminated to prevent exposure of the project. But not before she passed those genetic markers to her daughter. Michael's breath caught. He looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully with her rabbit in her arms. His daughter wasn't just unlucky. She was targeted, because of Sarah. He slammed his fist onto the table, the sound reverberating like a gunshot. All this time I thought I failed to protect her. And it wasn't fate, it was murder. Black's voice was careful. We don't have absolute proof yet, but the evidence is strong. Sarah's name appears in connection with Dr. Harold Knox, the lead scientist behind Project K-21. He's still out there. And he's the one who wants Lily. Michael leaned forward, his voice a low growl. Then give me his location. I'll finish this. Diana raised a hand. It's not that simple. Knox operates off-grid. We've tracked his network through shell companies, and the name Biogen Research Solutions keeps surfacing. That's who sent those packages to your house. Linda was working with him. Michael spat the name like venom. Linda. Yes, Diana said. We interrogated her last night. She admitted Knox recruited her after the program was supposedly disbanded. She was promised funding, career resurrection, and protection, if she helped harvest Lily's biofluid. Michael's hands trembled with barely contained rage. So she sold out an 8-year-old girl to get her lab coat back. Black nodded grimly. Knox calls Lily the perfect candidate. Her immune system doesn't just resist, it adapts. Every time those organisms bite her, she doesn't break down. She evolves. That's why the fluid they extracted is so valuable. Michael sat in silence, the truth pressing down on him like a weight he could barely breathe under. Sarah had died because she was special. Lily was nearly stolen because she inherited it. And Linda, the woman he had trusted with his child, was the hand that held the scalpel. Finally, Michael raised his head, eyes burning. You want my cooperation? You've got it. But understand something, this isn't about files or trials anymore. This is personal. Knox took Sarah. He almost took Lily. And if he thinks he's untouchable, I'll show him just how wrong he is. Diana met his gaze, and for the first time, her voice softened. That's why we came to you. Because we need a soldier who isn't afraid to burn down the whole operation. With your blood, we saved Lily. With your resolve, we can save the others. Michael's brow furrowed. Others? Dr. Black opened another file. More photographs slid across the table. Children, frail, marked with red rashes, their eyes hollow with fear. Lily isn't the only one, Black said quietly. There are more children like her. Still in Knox's hands. Michael's pulse thundered. His voice came out like a battle order. Then what are we waiting for? The black van cut through the night like a phantom, headlights dimmed, tires silent on the wet back roads outside DC. Inside, Michael sat strapped into tactical gear that felt both familiar and foreign. His rifle rested across his knees, but it wasn't the weapon that mattered, it was the fire in his chest. Captain Myers sat beside him, tablet balanced on his lap, a map glowing on the screen. We've traced Knox to an abandoned pediatric clinic on the outskirts. It's a shell facility, front doors boarded up, windows shattered. But the real lab is in the basement. Cameras, motion sensors, steel doors. He's fortified it like a fortress. Michael studied the image, jaw locked. Then we breach it like a fortress. And we don't leave until every kid is out. The other operators in the van exchanged quick glances. They weren't just hearing a soldier. They were hearing a father on a mission, and that was something more dangerous than any weapon they carried. The van screeched to a halt in a shadowed alley. The team fanned out, moving silent as predators. Michael's boots crunched broken glass as he approached the side entrance. Meyer gave the signal. 1, 2, 3. The steel lock blew with a muffled pop. The clinic smelled of mold and rot, the peeling wallpaper hiding what the place had once been, a place for children. Now, it was a tomb of science gone mad. They moved deeper, guns raised, the hum of generators faint beneath their feet. At the basement door, Meyer leaned in. Thermal scans show at least 6 heat signatures inside. One of them matches Knox. Michael's pulse surged. He nodded. Let's finish this. The team stormed in. The basement was a grotesque lab, glass tanks lining the walls, filled with writhing organisms that pulsed and glowed like the creatures Michael had found under Lily's pillow. Steel tables carried children's files, vials of red fluid, and instruments that belonged in nightmares, not medicine. At the center of it all stood Dr. Harold Knox. Tall, gaunt, white hair slicked back, eyes glinting behind wire-rimmed glasses. He looked up with calm detachment, as though the intrusion were an inconvenience, not a threat. Well, Knox said smoothly. If it isn't the soldier father. I wondered when you'd come. Michael leveled his rifle. Where are they? Knox tilted his head toward a sealed chamber at the far wall. Sleeping. Peacefully. For now. You should be proud, Rourke. Your daughter's gift will save lives. Entire nations. You tortured her, Michael spat. You killed Sarah. You ruined everything. Knox's lip curled into a thin smile. Collateral. Progress demands sacrifice. Sarah was weak. Lily, however, she is perfection. A child who can adapt. Her blood is the future. Michael's finger tightened on the trigger. Not if I end you first. Gunfire erupted. Knox's guards surged from the shadows. The basement turned into chaos, flashes of muzzle fire, shouted commands, the crash of glass shattering as tanks of glowing organisms burst across the floor. Michael moved like he was back in combat, controlled bursts, precise strikes. He dropped one guard, then another, his fury making him faster, sharper. Meyer covered his flank, cutting through 2 more. At the far wall, Knox tried to trigger a data wipe. Michael saw it, charged forward, slammed him against the console. The 2 men grappled, Knox surprisingly strong for his age, fueled by desperation. You can't stop it. Knox hissed. There will always be another project, another child. Michael drove his fist into Knox's face, once, twice, until blood streaked the scientist's lips. Not if I burn it to the ground. Michael. Meyer's voice cut through the chaos. He was prying open the sealed chamber. Inside, 3 children cowered, skin marked with the same rash Lily once bore. They were skeletal, trembling, but alive. Michael's chest clenched. He dropped his rifle, knelt, and extended his hands. It's okay now. You're safe. A boy, no older than 6, whispered hoarsely, Are you the kind doctor? Michael froze. The words echoed the ones Clara had once spoken. Slowly, he nodded. Yeah, kid. That's me. He carried the boy out, another soldier scooping up the others. Behind them, Diana's strike team flooded in, sealing the lab, confiscating the files, the vials, the evidence. Knox, beaten and handcuffed, sneered through bloodied teeth. You think you've won, he croaked. You've delayed the future. But you can't stop it. Michael leaned close, his voice a whisper of steel. Watch me. The aftermath stretched into weeks. Media swarmed the story, illegal experiments, a disgraced scientist, rescued children. Knox's name became synonymous with cruelty, his arrest televised worldwide. Linda Harper was tried alongside him, her betrayal etched into history. But Michael didn't care about headlines. He cared about Lily. At a seaside safe house arranged by the government, Michael and Lily rebuilt their lives. The ocean stretched wide and blue, waves crashing against the shore. Lily laughed again, clear, unbroken laughter, as she ran barefoot through the sand, her rabbit clutched tight. Michael stood on the porch, watching her, his chest light for the first time in years. She turned, smiling, and shouted, "Daddy, look! No more bugs." Michael laughed, the sound raw and free. He opened his arms, and she ran into them. He lifted her high, her giggles echoing against the waves. For once, there were no shadows, no whispers, no red marks on her skin. Only sunlight, laughter, and the promise of tomorrow. Michael whispered into her hair, "You'll never be afraid again. Not while I'm here." Weeks later, Diana West invited him to testify before a global tribunal on medical ethics. He declined. "I'm not a hero," he said quietly. "I'm just a father." But his actions said otherwise. He founded a small foundation in Lily's name, dedicated to protecting children from medical exploitation. He never stepped into the spotlight, he worked quietly, behind the scenes, letting others speak. And at night, when Lily fell asleep in the next room, Michael sat by the window, rifle across his knees, eyes on the horizon. Not as a soldier. Not as a victim. But as a father who had faced monsters, torn them down, and chosen love as his final weapon.